The scent of turpentine clung to my fingers as I locked the gallery's back door, my hands still trembling from the day's delicate work, restoring a 17th century landscape. The alley behind Galleria Luminosa stretched before me in shadows, lit only by a single flickering street lamp that cast more darkness than light. My messenger bag, heavy with conservation tools and reference books, dug into my shoulder as I hurried toward the main street 3 blocks away. I should have taken the front exit. Should have waited for Marco, the gallery's security guard, to finish his rounds. Should have done a lot of things differently. But Marcus had been waiting at the front entrance yesterday, and the day before that, his texts growing more desperate and unhinged with each passing hour since I'd ended things 2 months ago. The cold November air bit at my cheeks as I quickened my pace, my worn boots splashing through puddles that reflected the city's amber glow. Behind me, I heard it, the sound that had haunted my nightmares for weeks. Footsteps, running footsteps that matched my own accelerating rhythm. "Ivy, I know you're there. We need to talk." Marcus's voice echoed off the brick walls, closer than I'd expected. Panic flooded my system, that familiar cocktail of adrenaline and terror that had become my constant companion. My breath came in short gasps as I broke into a run, my bag bouncing painfully against my hip. The alley branched ahead, and I took the left fork without thinking, plunging deeper into the maze of service entrances and loading docks that serviced the city's art district. The street lamps grew sparser here, and I realized too late that I'd made a mistake. This wasn't a through street, it was a dead end. My heart hammered against my ribs as I spun around, searching desperately for an exit, a door, anything. The sound of Marcus's footsteps grew louder, his shadow appearing at the mouth of the alley. In that moment of pure terror, I felt a hand close around my wrist and pull me backward into deeper darkness. I opened my mouth to scream, but another hand covered it gently but firmly. A body pressed against mine, solid and warm, pushing me back against the cold brick wall. The scent of expensive cologne and something darker, more dangerous, surrounded me. A voice, low and commanding, spoke directly into my ear. "Don't move. Don't make a sound." I should have fought. Should have bitten the hand covering my mouth. Should have kicked and scratched. But something in that voice, something in the calm authority of it, made me freeze. Through the gap between my captor's arm and torso, I watched Marcus run past our hiding spot, his footsteps echoing as he continued deeper into the maze of alleys. We stood there in the shadows for what felt like an eternity, but was probably only a minute. The man holding me didn't speak again, didn't move except for the rise and fall of his chest against my back. When Marcus's footsteps finally faded into silence, the hand over my mouth loosened slightly. "He's gone," the voice said. "Are you going to scream if I let you go?" I shook my head, my heart still racing, but my terror now mixed with a different kind of awareness. The man released me slowly, stepping back, but keeping one hand on my arm, as if he thought I might bolt. I turned to face my rescuer, and found myself looking up at a man who seemed to have stepped out of the shadows themselves. He was tall, several inches over 6 feet, with the kind of build that spoke of disciplined strength rather than gym vanity. Dark hair styled back revealed a face of sharp angles and harder lines, a jaw that could have been carved from marble, and eyes that caught what little light penetrated our hiding spot. They were an unusual shade of gray, like storm clouds, and they studied me with an intensity that made me forget to breathe. He wore a black suit that fit him perfectly, expensive enough that I could tell even in the dim light. No tie, the first few buttons of his white dress shirt undone, revealing the column of his throat. On his left wrist, a watch that probably cost more than everything in my apartment combined caught the light as he finally released my arm. "Your hands are in the wrong place, mafioso," I said before I could stop myself, my nervousness making me say things I shouldn't. It was a defense mechanism I'd never quite conquered, this tendency to get sharp-tongued when terrified. Something flickered in those gray eyes. Not anger, as I'd expected. but what might have been amusement. The corner of his mouth twitched in what wasn't quite a smile, but was close enough to make my pulse skip. "Mafioso?" he repeated, his voice carrying a hint of accent I couldn't quite place. Italian, perhaps, or something similar. "What makes you think that?" I gestured vaguely at him, at the expensive suit and the dangerous air that clung to him like a second skin. "You materialized out of nowhere in a dark alley. You move like a predator, and you're wearing a suit that costs more than my yearly rent. Also, you didn't ask who I was running from. You just pulled me into the shadows like you do this regularly." This time he did smile, a brief flash of white teeth that transformed his face from merely intimidating to genuinely dangerous. "Observant. Is that why you restore art? The attention to detail?" The fact that he knew what I did sent a chill down my spine. "How do you know about my work?" He tilted his head slightly, studying me with those storm cloud eyes. "Galleria Luminosa is in my territory. I make it my business to know everyone who works here." His territory. The words confirmed what I'd already suspected. This man wasn't just wealthy. He was powerful in ways that had nothing to do with legitimate business. The kind of power that came from controlling the city's underbelly, from having people answer to him out of fear rather than respect. "Thank you for helping me," I said, trying to edge past him toward the mouth of the alley. "But I should go before Marcus comes back." His hand shot out, not grabbing me but blocking my path. "The man who was chasing you, he's your ex-boyfriend?" It wasn't really a question, more of a statement seeking confirmation. I nodded, wrapping my arms around myself against the cold and against the memory of Marcus's increasingly unhinged messages. "He's been stalking you," the stranger continued, still not phrasing it as a question. "Following you home, waiting outside your work, sending threatening messages." "How do you—" I began, but he interrupted with a slight shake of his head. "I told you. This is my territory. When someone behaves suspiciously in my territory, I notice. Your Marcus has been very suspicious for several weeks now. The possessive way he said your Marcus made me bristle. He's not mine. Not anymore. Not ever again." "But he thinks he is," the man observed. "Men like him don't let go easily. They see women as possessions, things to be owned rather than people to be respected." There was something in his voice when he said it, something dark and knowing that made me wonder if he was speaking from experience. As the predator or the prey, I couldn't tell. "I've filed a restraining order," I said defensively, though we both knew how useless that was. "The police said they can't do anything until he actually does something." "By which time it will be too late," he finished for me. "The law is very reactive when it comes to stalkers. They wait for violence before they act." The casual way he said it, the complete understanding of how inadequate legal protections were, made something in my chest tighten. He was right. The police had been sympathetic, but ultimately useless. Marcus had a clean record, no history of violence, and was careful to stay just on the right side of the law with his harassment. "I'll be more careful," I said, though even I didn't believe it. "Thank you again for—" "It won't be enough," he interrupted, his voice flat and certain. "Men like your Marcus, they don't stop. They escalate. Right now, he's following you, sending messages. Next week, next month, he'll work up the courage to do more. By the time the police decide he's a real threat, you'll be in the hospital or worse." The brutal honesty of it made me flinch. "What do you suggest I do? Move cities? Change my identity? Or," he said slowly, as if the idea was just occurring to him, though I suspected he'd been thinking about it since the moment he pulled me into the shadows. "You could let me help you." I laughed, a sharp, nervous sound that echoed off the brick walls. Let a mafioso help me deal with my stalker ex-boyfriend? What would that involve exactly? Having him disappear into the river? His expression didn't change, but something in his eyes darkened. I'm not a monster, despite what you seem to think. I have rules, lines I don't cross. Violence against civilians isn't how I conduct business. Then how do you conduct business? I challenged, that nervous tendency to mouth off kicking in again. With strategy, he replied, with leverage, with making people understand that it's in their best interest to comply with my suggestions. He paused. Your Marcus needs to understand that pursuing you is very much not in his best interest. Despite the fear still coursing through my system, despite every instinct telling me to run from this dangerous man, I found myself asking, and what would you want in return? His smile this time was different, almost rueful. You are observant. Nothing in my world comes without a price, does it? I would assume not. He was quiet for a long moment, his gaze never leaving my face. I had the distinct impression he was making a decision, weighing options with the same careful attention I gave to deciding which cleaning solution to use on a delicate painting. I have a problem, he said finally. A business complication that requires a specific kind of solution. I need a distraction, someone who can play a role convincingly for a limited time. 6 months, perhaps a bit longer. My stomach sank. What kind of role? My girlfriend, he said simply. Or rather, the woman who appears to be my girlfriend to anyone watching. You would attend certain events with me, be seen in public at my side, give the impression that I am otherwise occupied with personal matters rather than business ones. I stared at him, certain I'd misheard. You want me to pretend to be your girlfriend? That's insane. Is it? He shifted slightly, and the streetlight caught his face differently, highlighting the sharp angles and the hint of a scar along his jawline. You need protection from a man who won't stop pursuing you. I need someone who can convincingly play the role of a woman who has captured my attention, who makes me appear softer, more domesticated, less threatening to certain business rivals. Why me? I asked. You could have anyone. Someone who actually knows how to navigate your world. Precisely why not them? He countered. Anyone from my world would be recognized as a strategic move. But you're an art restorer, completely civilian, no connections to any families or organizations. You're genuine, which makes the relationship appear genuine. The logic was sound, I had to admit, and the offer was tempting in a terrifying sort of way. Protection from Marcus, safety I desperately needed, in exchange for playing dress-up at events for 6 months. What happens after 6 months? I asked. We have a very public, very mutual breakup. You walk away with your life back, Marcus thoroughly warned off, and a generous financial settlement for your time. I don't want your money, I said, automatically. This seemed to surprise him. No? What do you want then? I thought about my tiny apartment, my mountain of student debt, the restoration tools I needed but couldn't afford. A donation to the gallery's conservation fund, anonymous, enough to properly restore the collection in the basement that's been neglected for decades. Now he really did look surprised, a slight widening of those gray eyes. You would rather have money go to old paintings than to yourself? Those paintings matter, I said defensively. Their history, culture, beauty that deserves to be preserved. And I don't need much for myself anyway. He studied me for another long moment, and I wondered what he saw. A naive girl playing at being brave? A potential pawn in whatever game he was playing? Or something else entirely? 6 months, he said finally, extending his hand. You play the role convincingly, attend events with me, let yourself be seen as mine. In return, I ensure your ex-boyfriend understands that pursuing you would be catastrophically unwise, and I donate $1 million to your gallery's conservation fund." I stared at his extended hand, my mind racing. $1 million. We could restore everything in the basement, could save paintings that had been deteriorating for years, and I would be safe from Marcus. Truly safe for the first time in months. But this man, this beautiful, dangerous stranger, was asking me to enter his world. To pretend to be something I wasn't. To someone who probably ate people like me for breakfast. "I don't even know your name," I said, not taking his hand yet. "Dante," he replied. "Dante Romano." Romano. The name echoed in my head, triggering half-remembered conversations overheard at gallery events, whispered warnings from Marco about certain families that controlled certain territories. The Romanos weren't just connected to organized crime, they practically invented it in this city. "Ivy," I said, my voice steadier than I felt. "Ivy Chen." I took his hand. His grip was firm but not crushing, his skin warm despite the cold air. As our hands connected, I felt the weight of the decision settle over me. 6 months, half a year of pretending to be the girlfriend of a mafia boss. What could possibly go wrong? "Everything," whispered a voice in my head. Everything could go wrong. But when Dante smiled at me, a genuine smile that crinkled the corners of those storm cloud eyes, I found myself smiling back despite my terror. "We have an agreement then," he said, still holding my hand. "I'll have my driver take you home tonight. Tomorrow, we'll discuss the details of our arrangement." "I should probably know what I'm agreeing to before signing on," I pointed out. "Too late," he said, but his tone was almost teasing. "You've already shaken on it. In my world, that's as binding as any contract." He led me out of the alley, his hand at the small of my back, proprietary and protective in equal measure. A black car materialized from the shadows, expensive and sleek, with windows tinted so dark I couldn't see inside. "This is Vincent," Dante said as a man emerged from the driver's seat. Vincent was shorter than Dante, but broader, with the kind of build that suggested he could break someone in half without much effort. "He'll take you home safely. I'll call you tomorrow to arrange our first public appearance." "You don't have my number," I pointed out. Dante's smile was knowing. "I'll have your number within the hour. I told you, I make it my business to know everything in my territory." The casual demonstration of his reach should have frightened me more than it did. Instead, as I slid into the back seat of the car, I found myself thinking that maybe, just maybe, I'd made the right choice. The sun streaming through my apartment's single window woke me far too early, my mind refusing to let me sleep past 7 despite having crawled into bed past midnight. I'd spent hours after Vincent dropped me off researching Dante Romano, though most of what I found was either speculation or carefully sanitized information. The Romano family controlled the art district and several surrounding neighborhoods, ran half the upscale restaurants in the city, and were suspected of involvement in everything from money laundering to art theft, though nothing had ever been proven in court. Convenient, I thought, sipping the bitter coffee I'd made in my ancient coffee maker. Very convenient for a man who apparently owned judges and police captains. My phone, sitting next to my laptop on the scratched kitchen table, buzzed with an incoming call from an unknown number. I let it go to voicemail, assuming it was a spam call, but seconds later it buzzed again. Same number. "Hello?" I answered warily on the third ring. "Good morning, Ivy." Dante's voice was as smooth and commanding over the phone as it had been in person. "I hope I'm not calling too early." I glanced at the clock. 7:47 a.m. "Not too early. Just surprised you actually have my number." "I told you I would." There was amusement in his tone. "I also know your address, your work schedule, your favorite coffee shop, and that you have a standing Tuesday appointment at the library 2 blocks from the gallery." The casual admission that he'd been having me investigated should have made me angrier than it did. Instead, I found myself asking, Why were you watching me before last night? A pause. Your ex-boyfriend's behavior caught my attention 3 weeks ago. When I investigated why he was staking out locations in my territory, your name came up. I've been keeping an eye on the situation. How reassuring, I said dryly. Nothing says romance like premeditated stalking. He laughed, a genuine sound that caught me off guard. If this were a romance, cara mia, I would have approached you very differently. This is business. Though I admit, I'm finding the business more interesting than I anticipated. The Italian endearment sent an unexpected flutter through my chest. Don't call me that. Why not? We're supposed to be convincing as a couple. Terms of endearment are standard. We haven't even had our first date yet, I pointed out. Seems premature. About that. Papers rustled in the background. I need you available Friday evening. There's a gallery opening, ironically, and it's the perfect venue for our first public appearance. Formal dress? I'll send a car at 7. I don't have anything appropriate for... I'm having several options delivered to your apartment this afternoon. Tell the boutique staff what works. They'll handle any alterations. Before I could protest, he continued, This is part of our arrangement, Ivy. You need to look the part. Consider it a costume for the role you're playing. He wasn't wrong, but I still felt uncomfortable accepting expensive clothes from him. Fine, but I'm choosing what I wear. I wouldn't have it any other way. You have excellent taste. That much was clear from your outfit last night. I looked down at my current attire, paint-stained yoga pants, and an oversized sweatshirt from my university days. You mean my work clothes that I wore to run away from my stalker? You made even terror look elegant, he said, and I couldn't tell if he was joking. I'll see you Friday evening. Oh, and Ivy? Yes? Your ex-boyfriend received a visit from some of my associates this morning. He won't be bothering you anymore. Before I could respond to that disturbing piece of information, he'd ended the call. I sat staring at my phone for a long moment, trying to process what had just happened. Dante had sent people to Marcus. To warn him off, presumably, though the thought of what form that warning had taken made my stomach clench. This is what you agreed to, I reminded myself. Protection, safety. This is what that looks like in his world. Work provided a welcome distraction. I spent the day in the gallery's conservation studio, carefully removing centuries of yellowed varnish from a landscape painting dated 1642. The slow, methodical work required complete focus, leaving no room for thoughts of dangerous men and bargains with devils. Special delivery for Ms. Chen, Marco called from the doorway around 3 p.m. Behind him stood 2 women in sleek black suits, each carrying garment bags emblazoned with a boutique logo I recognized from magazine advertisements. The kind of place where a single dress probably cost more than my monthly rent. The women introduced themselves as Cecilia and Diana, personal stylists from Maison Laurent. They'd brought 6 evening gowns for me to try, each more stunning than the last. Deep emerald silk that brought out the green flecks in my eyes. Midnight blue velvet that hugged my figure perfectly. Classic black with unexpected cutouts. Burgundy lace that made me look older, more sophisticated. Mr. Romano suggested the emerald, Cecilia said, as I stood in front of my apartment's full-length mirror, turning to see how the fabric caught the light. He said it would complement your coloring. The dress fit as if it had been made for me, which it probably had been based on whatever measurements Dante's people had obtained. The neckline was modest but elegant, the back cut low enough to be interesting without being scandalous. I looked like someone who could belong on a Mafia Boss's arm, which was presumably the point. We'll take the emerald for Friday, I told them. And thank you for bringing so many options. Diana smiled. Mr. Romano wants you to keep all of them. He said you'll need appropriate attire for several events over the coming months. Of course he did, because in Dante's world, everything had to be perfect, controlled, managed, including his fake girlfriend's wardrobe. After the stylists left, I tried to return to work on a preliminary examination of a damaged frame, but my concentration was broken. I kept thinking about Dante's voice on the phone, the casual way he'd mentioned having Marcus warned off, the strange feeling in my chest when he'd called me cara mia. This was fake, I reminded myself firmly. A role, a performance. In 6 months, I'd walk away with the gallery's conservation fund fully funded and my life back to normal. Whatever I was feeling was just a normal reaction to someone who'd rescued me from a dangerous situation. Nothing more. My phone buzzed with a text from an unknown number. Your ex-boyfriend won't be filing any more reports about seeing you. He's decided to take an extended vacation in Nevada. Permanently. D. I stared at the message, a mix of relief and unease washing over me. Marcus was gone. Really, truly gone. The threat that had haunted me for months, that had made me jump at shadows and avoid certain streets, was simply eliminated. What did your people do to him? I texted back. The response came quickly. Nothing permanent. Just convinced him that his future prospects would be significantly better in another state. He left this morning. How? Does it matter? I thought about that. Did it matter? Marcus was gone. I was safe. And Dante had kept his word without apparently resorting to violence. Maybe I didn't need to know the specifics. Thank you, I finally typed. You're welcome, cara mia. See you Friday. Friday arrived faster than I expected. I spent the day in a fog of anxiety, barely able to concentrate on the delicate work of cleaning a 16th century altarpiece. My hands, usually steady, trembled enough that I had to stop work early, afraid I'd damaged something irreplaceable. By 6 p.m. I'd showered, done my makeup more carefully than usual, and slipped into the emerald dress. My usually casual chestnut waves had been tamed into soft curls that fell past my shoulders. Cecilia had left a selection of jewelry, all borrowed, she'd emphasized, and I chose simple diamond studs and a delicate bracelet that didn't look like it cost more than a car. At exactly 7, my building's ancient intercom buzzed. I grabbed the small clutch purse that had come with the dress and headed downstairs, my heart hammering against my ribs. Vincent waited by the black car, but this time he wasn't alone. Dante stood beside him, and the sight of him made my breath catch in a way that had nothing to do with nervousness about our arrangement, and everything to do with how devastatingly handsome he looked in his tailored black tuxedo. "Buonasera, Ivy," he said, his gray eyes warming as they traveled over me. "You look breathtaking." "You look." I struggled for words that wouldn't give away how affected I was. "Appropriate." He laughed, offering his arm. "High praise indeed. Shall we?" The gallery opening was at a new contemporary art space in the Cultural District, about 20 minutes away. As Vincent drove, Dante briefed me on what to expect. "There will be people there who know me, who know my business," he explained. "Some may try to approach you, ask questions, probe for information. You don't need to answer anything beyond basic pleasantries. If anyone makes you uncomfortable, stay close to me." "What should I say about how we met?" I asked. "The truth, mostly. We met in an alley behind your gallery. You were leaving work. I was passing through. We struck up a conversation about art. No need to mention Marcus or the specific circumstances." "And how long have we been seeing each other?" 3 weeks, he said smoothly. "Long enough to be serious, but recent enough that people haven't heard about it yet. You're not involved in my business. You don't want to be, and I respect that boundary." The gallery was already crowded when we arrived, the cream of the city's art world mingling with the kind of people whose wealth came from less legitimate sources. I recognized a few faces from events I'd catered or attended for work, but most were strangers. Dante's hand settled at the small of my back as we entered, proprietary and protective. Heads turned, conversations paused mid-sentence. A woman in a stunning red dress approached us immediately. her smile wide but not reaching her eyes. "Dante, darling," she purred in a voice that dripped false warmth. "I heard rumors you'd be here." "And who is this?" "Sophia," Dante acknowledged with a nod. "This is Ivy Chen." "Ivy. Sophia Marchetti." Marchetti, another name I recognized from whispered conversations about the city's underworld families. Sophia's smile sharpened as she looked me over, clearly cataloging every detail of my appearance. "How did you two meet?" she asked, her tone suggesting she already knew the answer would be disappointing. "In an alley," I said before Dante could respond. "Very romantic. Trash bins, the smell of old coffee grounds, the works." Sophia blinked, clearly not expecting honesty. Dante's hand tightened slightly on my back, and I could feel him trying not to laugh. "How?" "Unconventional," Sophia finally said. "And what do you do, Ivy?" "I restore paintings," I replied. "Old ones, mostly. Currently working on a 17th century landscape that someone decided to clean with furniture polish at some point. It's been exciting." Dante did laugh at that, a low sound that drew more attention from the surrounding crowd. Sophia's eyes narrowed. "How fascinating," she said, in a tone that suggested it was anything but. "Well, I'll leave you two to enjoy the evening. Dante, we should talk business soon." "My schedule is quite full," Dante replied smoothly. "Perhaps next month." As Sophia glided away, I felt tension I hadn't realized I was holding release from Dante's shoulders. "That went well," he murmured in my ear. "You're a natural at this." "At being rude to dangerous people?" I whispered back. "At being yourself, that's what makes it convincing." His hand guided me deeper into the gallery. "Come, let me introduce you to some people who aren't vipers in designer shoes." The next 2 hours passed in a blur of introductions, champagne I barely sipped, and art I couldn't properly appreciate, because I was too focused on playing my role. Dante stayed close, his presence a constant anchor, his hand always somewhere on me, my back, my waist, my hand clasped in his. To anyone watching, we looked like a couple completely absorbed in each other. The scary thing was how easily it felt real. "You're doing beautifully," Dante murmured during a brief moment when we were alone, admiring a massive abstract canvas. "Even I almost believe we're actually together." "Maybe I should have been an actress instead of an art restorer," I replied, my eyes fixed on the painting's bold color blocks. "Or maybe," he said, his voice dropping lower, "it's not entirely an act." I turned to look at him, found him closer than I'd expected, those storm cloud eyes fixed on me with an intensity that made my pulse skip. "Dante." "There you are." A man's voice cut through the moment. We both turned to find a tall, silver-haired figure approaching, his smile broad and genuine. Unlike Sophia's calculating coldness, this man radiated warmth. "Antonio," Dante said, and I heard real affection in his voice. "I wasn't expecting to see you here." "Art is one of my few remaining pleasures," Antonio replied in accented English, his eyes crinkling at the corners. "And who is this lovely young woman?" "Ivy Chen, my girlfriend." "Ivy, this is Antonio Bellagio. He's an old friend of my family." We shook hands, and I noticed how Antonio's grip was gentle, respectful. "A pleasure, Ms. Chen. How did someone like you end up with this troublemaker?" "She has questionable judgment," Dante said before I could answer, but his tone was teasing. "I was running away from one danger and found another," I replied honestly. "But this one at least comes with better conversation." Antonio laughed delightedly. "Oh, I like her, Dante. You better not let this one escape." The word escape hung in the air, and I saw something shift in Dante's expression. A flash of something that might have been guilt or regret. But it was gone so quickly I might have imagined it. "I don't plan to," Dante said quietly, We parted ways with Antonio, and Dante guided me toward the exit. I think we've been seen enough for one evening. Would you like to get dinner somewhere quieter? I should probably get home, I said, though part of me wanted to say yes. Early day tomorrow. Something that might have been disappointment crossed his face. Of course, Vincent will take you. The drive back to my apartment was quiet. Dante had joined me in the back seat, and the silence between us felt charged with unspoken thoughts. When we pulled up to my building, he walked me to the door despite my protests. Thank you for tonight, he said, his hands in his pockets as if he didn't trust himself not to reach for me. You exceeded all expectations. Happy to play my part, I replied, though my voice came out softer than I'd intended. Ivy. He stepped closer, and I found myself looking up at him in the dim light from the street lamp. This arrangement we have, it's business. But I want you to know, if you ever feel uncomfortable, if you want to end it, you can. I'll still handle the donation, still make sure you're protected. You're not trapped. The sincerity in his voice, the unexpected gentleness, made my throat tight. I know, and thank you. For tonight, for Marcus, for all of it. He reached up slowly, giving me time to pull away, and brushed a strand of hair from my face. His fingers lingered against my cheek for just a moment before dropping away. Buonanotte, cara mia, he murmured. Sweet dreams. I watched him return to the car, watched it pull away into the night, and stood on my building's steps long after the taillights disappeared. My cheek still tingled where he'd touched it, and I found myself wondering what I'd gotten myself into. This was supposed to be fake, an arrangement, business. So why did it feel like something else entirely? 2 weeks into our arrangement, I still wasn't sure if I'd made a brilliant decision or the worst mistake of my life. Dante and I had fallen into a routine. He'd text in the mornings, usually something brief and professional about our schedule. We'd attend 2 or 3 events per week, gallery openings, charity dinners, opera performances in private boxes. And with each appearance, the fiction became easier to maintain. Too easy, actually. That was the problem. I'd learned things about Dante during our public performances. Small details that didn't fit the image of a cold, calculating crime boss. He liked his espresso with exactly 2 sugars. He had an encyclopedic knowledge of Renaissance art that rivaled my own. When he thought no one was watching, he'd hum under his breath, usually opera arias. And he was unfailingly kind to service staff, waiters, drivers, coat check attendants, treating them with a respect that seemed at odds with his reputation. You're staring at me again, Dante observed without looking up from the exhibition catalog he was reading. We were at yet another gallery opening, this one featuring contemporary sculpture, and I'd been caught watching him examine a particularly challenging piece. Just wondering what you really think of it, I said, gesturing at the twisted metal form before us. You have this face you make when you're pretending to appreciate something you actually find ridiculous. He did look up then, surprise flickering in those gray eyes. I do. Left corner of your mouth twitches. Very subtle. But it's there. Dante studied me for a long moment, something unreadable in his expression. You notice too much, Ivy Chen. Occupational hazard. I spend my days examining tiny details most people miss. And what else have you noticed? He turned to face me fully, his back to the sculpture, his attention completely focused on me in a way that made my pulse quicken. I should have deflected, should have made a joke. Instead, I heard myself say that you donated $50,000 to the food bank last week under someone else's name. That you spent an hour on the phone in Italian, yelling at someone, and when you hung up you looked sad rather than angry. That every time someone mentions art theft, you change the subject, and that when you think no one's watching, you look at me like, I trailed off, suddenly unable to finish the thought. Like what? His voice was low, intimate, meant only for me, despite the crowded room around us. Like this might not be entirely fake for you either, I whispered. The silence between us stretched, heavy with things unsaid. Around us, the gallery buzzed with conversation and the clink of champagne glasses, but it felt like we existed in a bubble of our own making. Ivy, Dante began, then stopped as his phone buzzed insistently. He glanced at it, his jaw tightening. I need to take this. Stay here. I'll be right back. He disappeared into the crowd, and I was left alone with my racing thoughts and the twisted metal sculpture that suddenly seemed like a perfect metaphor for our relationship. Beautiful, but dangerous. Solid, but impossible to navigate. You must be the famous Ivy Chen. I turned to find a woman approaching, beautiful in a sharp, calculated way that reminded me of a blade. She wore black from head to toe, her dark hair pulled back severely, her smile not reaching her cold brown eyes. I don't think we've met, I said, instinctively stepping back. We haven't. I'm Isabella Romano, Dante's sister. My stomach dropped. Dante had never mentioned having a sister, though I suppose that made sense. Our relationship wasn't real. He had no obligation to share family details. It's nice to meet you, I said, extending my hand. Isabella didn't take it. Instead, she circled me slowly, examining me like I was a painting under authentication. You're not what I expected. I thought Dante's taste ran to more. Sophisticated women. The insult was delivered so smoothly I almost missed it. Almost. I'm an art restorer, I replied evenly. We tend to prefer substance over surface. A flicker of something. Respect, maybe? Crossed Isabella's face. Interesting. Tell me, Ivy, what do you know about my brother's business? That I want nothing to do with it. Smart answer. She moved to stand beside me, both of us now facing the sculpture. But that won't protect you. Being close to Dante, even in whatever capacity you're in, puts a target on your back. The Romano name carries weight in this city, and not all of it friendly. Is that a threat? A warning. Isabella's voice softened slightly. I don't know what arrangement you have with my brother, and honestly, I don't care. But I saw how he looked at you when he thought no one was watching. And that's dangerous, Ivy. For both of you. Before I could respond, Dante reappeared at my side. His entire demeanor shifted when he saw Isabella, his body going tense in a way I'd never seen before. Bella, he said, his voice carefully neutral. I didn't know you'd be here. Neither did I, until I heard my brother was parading around with a new girlfriend. Isabella's smile was sharp. We need to talk. Family business. Later. Now, Dante. It wasn't a request. Dante's hand found mine, squeezed gently. Give me 10 minutes. Vincent is outside if you need anything. I watched them disappear into a back room, Isabella's heels clicking purposefully on the polished concrete floor. The ease of the evening had evaporated, replaced by a tension that made my skin prickle with unease. 10 minutes became 20, then 30. I tried to look at the art, tried to enjoy the champagne, but my attention kept drifting to that closed door. Finally, unable to bear the waiting any longer, I made my way toward it. I didn't mean to eavesdrop. The door was slightly ajar, voices drifting through the gap, and I found myself frozen in place. You can't be serious about her. Isabella's voice, sharp with disbelief. That's not your concern. Dante's voice equally sharp. Of course it is. She's a civilian, Dante. A nobody with no connections, no understanding of our world. Father would be rolling in his grave. Father's been dead for 5 years. His opinions are irrelevant. But our family's reputation isn't. This girl makes you look weak, like you're going soft, putting personal feelings above business. That's exactly what I need people to think. A pause. The Marchettis are planning something, I know it. Having Ivy at my side makes me appear distracted, focused on romance instead of the war they're preparing. It's a strategic move. The words hit me like a physical blow. Strategic move. Of course. That's what this was. What it had always been. A strategy. A chess piece. A carefully planned distraction. I'd known that rationally. It was part of our deal. But hearing Dante explain it to his sister, reduce what felt increasingly real to cold calculation, made something in my chest crack. And when the Marchettis make their move, what happens to your little art restorer then? She'll be kept safe. That's part of the arrangement. Arrangements can change, little brother. People in our world die for less. I didn't wait to hear Dante's response. I turned and walked as quickly as I could without running, through the gallery, past curious onlookers, out into the cool night air. Vincent stood by the car, and I made a beeline for him. I need to go home. Now. Something in my face must have convinced him not to argue. He opened the door, and I slid inside, my hands trembling as I clutched my purse. My phone started buzzing almost immediately. Dante's name flashed across the screen. I declined the call. It rang again, and again. By the time I reached my apartment, I had 7 missed calls and 3 text messages. Where are you? Ivy, please. Let me explain. I'm coming over. We need to talk. I locked my apartment door and leaned against it, my breath coming in sharp gasps. This was what I'd agreed to, I reminded myself. A fake relationship. A strategic partnership. Nothing real. Nothing lasting. So why did I feel like I'd just had my heart broken? A knock at my door made me jump. I knew without checking the peephole that it was Dante. Ivy, please open the door. His voice was muffled but clear. I know you heard. Let me explain. You don't owe me an explanation, I called back, proud of how steady my voice sounded. I knew what this was. Business, strategy. I was stupid to think it might be more. It is more. Ivy, please. Go home, Dante. We'll continue our arrangement as planned. But that's all it is. An arrangement. Silence. Long enough that I thought he'd left. Then, so quietly I almost missed it. I never meant to hurt you. I waited until I heard his footsteps retreating down the hallway, until I heard the building's front door close. Only then did I allow myself to slide down to the floor, wrapping my arms around my knees. This was for the best, I told myself. Better to remember what this really was before I got in too deep, before I let myself believe the fiction we'd created. But as I sat there on my apartment floor, still wearing the designer dress and borrowed jewelry, I couldn't shake the memory of how Dante had looked at me earlier. Before his sister arrived, before reality intruded. He'd looked at me like I was the only person in the world. And for just a moment, I'd let myself believe it was real. The next morning brought a delivery. A thick manila envelope slipped under my door sometime before dawn. Inside, I found a single piece of paper with an address and a time, 3 p.m. today. Below it, in Dante's distinctive handwriting, please. There are things you need to know. Things I should have told you from the beginning. I stared at the note for a long time, weighing my options. I could ignore it, maintain the professional distance I should have kept from the start. Or I could go, hear whatever explanation he wanted to offer, and decide where we went from there. The address led me to a residential building in a part of the city I'd never visited, not as exclusive as where Dante's penthouse presumably was, but still far nicer than my neighborhood. The lobby was all marble and brass, with a doorman who clearly expected me. Ms. Chen, he said with a nod. Mr. Romano is expecting you. Penthouse B. The elevator code is 7749. The elevator ride felt endless. When the doors finally opened directly into a spacious apartment, I found Dante waiting. He'd shed his usual suit for jeans and a black sweater, looking younger and somehow more vulnerable without the armor of expensive tailoring. "Thank you for coming," he said, making no move to approach me. "I wasn't sure you would." I almost didn't. I stayed by the elevator, keeping distance between us. "What is this place?" "My apartment. The real one, not the penthouse I use for business meetings." He gestured around the space. Unlike the cold elegance I'd expected, this apartment was warm, lived in. Books overflowed from shelves, art covered every wall, and through an open door I could see a kitchen that actually looked used. "Why did you bring me here?" "Because I owe you honesty. All of it, not just the carefully curated version I've been showing you." He moved to the windows overlooking the city. "What you heard last night, what I told Isabella, it was true. Initially. You were supposed to be a strategic distraction. Nothing more." "And now?" The question came out more vulnerable than I'd intended. Dante turned to face me, and something in his expression made my breath catch. "Now I'm terrified that this thing between us, this fake relationship, has become the most real thing in my life." I'd prepared myself for excuses, for manipulation, for smooth words meant to bring me back in line. I hadn't prepared for raw honesty. "You barely know me," I said weakly. "I know you hum while you work. I know you have this tiny wrinkle between your eyebrows when you're concentrating. I know you donate half your paycheck to various charities despite barely making rent. I know you cry at sad movies but try to hide it. I know your favorite color changes based on what painting you're restoring." He took a step toward me. "I know you make me laugh for the first time in years. And I know that when you look at me, you see past the image to whatever's underneath." "Dante, let me finish." Another step. What I said to Isabella was true. The Marchettis are planning something, and having you on my arm does make me look distracted, vulnerable. But that's not why I keep finding excuses to call you, why I've been to 3 art exhibitions in 2 weeks when I'd usually attend 1 a year. It's not strategy anymore, Ivy. Maybe it never really was. I wanted to believe him. God, I wanted to believe him so badly it scared me. Your world, your life, it's dangerous. Your own sister warned me away. She did? He smiled ruefully. That sounds like Bella. She's protective, even when she's being a pain. He closed the remaining distance between us. She's not wrong. Being close to me puts you at risk. But I'm selfish enough to want you anyway, and arrogant enough to think I can keep you safe. This is insane. We've known each other for 2 weeks. 2 weeks, 1 day, 7 hours, he corrected. Not that I'm counting. Despite everything, I felt my lips twitch toward a smile. You're counting? Obsessively. His hand came up to cup my face, gentle and tentative. Tell me to leave you alone, Ivy. Tell me this is just business, and I'll find a way to live with it. But if there's any chance you feel this too, this thing that terrifies me and exhilarates me in equal measure, then I need to know. I should have said it was just business. Should have walked away before I got in deeper. Instead, I found myself leaning into his touch, my hand coming up to cover his. I feel it, I whispered. It terrifies me too. His smile was like sunrise, transforming his entire face. Thank God. He leaned down slowly, giving me every chance to pull away. When his lips met mine, gentle and questioning, I felt something inside me that had been tense for 2 weeks finally relax. The kiss deepened, his other arm coming around my waist to pull me closer. I let myself sink into it, into him, into the impossibility of what we were becoming. When we finally broke apart, both breathing hard, Dante rested his forehead against mine. 6 months was our deal. But I want more, Ivy, if you'll give it to me. What about the danger? The Marchettis, your business, all of it? I'll protect you, always. The certainty in his voice should have been arrogant, but instead it felt like a vow. Whatever comes, we face it together. I thought about the life I'd built, safe and small and lonely. Thought about Marcus and how fear had defined my existence for months. And then I thought about Dante, about how he'd appeared in that alley like an answer to a prayer I hadn't known I'd been praying. Okay, I said, but I have conditions. Name them. No lying. Not to me, not anymore. If something's happening, if there's danger, I want to know. Agreed. I keep my job, my apartment, my life outside of your world. Of course. And when this blows up in our faces... I saw him start to protest and pressed a finger to his lips. When, not if. When this ends badly. Because let's be honest about the odds here. You let me walk away without trying to follow. His expression darkened at that condition, but he nodded slowly. If that's what you truly want, yes. One more thing. Anything. Introduce me to your sister properly. I need to know I'm not just disrupting your family for my own selfish reasons. Dante laughed, pulling me back against him. You're worried about being selfish? Ivy, I'm the one dragging an art restorer into mob politics, because I can't stand the thought of letting you go. If anyone's being selfish, it's me. We can be selfish together, I suggested, and felt his chest rumble with laughter. Together, he agreed, sealing it with another kiss that made the world outside his apartment fade away entirely. Whatever happened next, whatever dangers lurked in the shadows of Dante's world, we'd face them together. For now, in this moment, that was enough. The transition from fake relationship to something real should have been more complicated. Instead, it felt like the most natural thing in the world. Over the next 3 weeks, I split my time between my cramped apartment and Dante's real home, slowly learning the rhythms of his life beyond the public performances. I learned that he woke at 5 every morning without an alarm, brewing espresso that could strip paint while catching up on international news in 3 languages. I learned that Tuesday evenings he had standing video calls with his mother in Sicily, speaking rapid Italian while she showed him whatever she was cooking. I learned that he had a scar on his ribs from a knife fight when he was 17, and that he still had nightmares about it sometimes. Tell me about your father, I asked one evening as we sat on his couch, my feet in his lap while he absently massaged them. Rain drummed against the windows, cocooning us in warmth and intimacy. Dante's hands stilled on my feet. What do you want to know? Everything. You never talk about him. He was quiet for so long I thought he wouldn't answer. Then, Marco Romano was a complicated man, brilliant, ruthless, capable of great kindness and terrible violence often in the same day. He built our family's empire from almost nothing, turned us from small-time neighborhood enforcers into one of the most powerful organizations in the city. You admired him. I did. And I hated him. Dante's eyes were distant, seeing something I couldn't. He taught me everything about the business, groomed me to take over from the time I was 12. But he also expected perfection. Any weakness, any hesitation, was punished. Not physically. He never hit us. But his disappointment was worse than any beating. I sat up, taking his hands in mine. You don't have to be him, you know. Just because you inherited his empire doesn't mean you have to inherit his cruelty. Don't I? His gaze focused back on me, vulnerability naked in those gray eyes. This world I live in, Ivy, it doesn't reward compassion. Every mercy I show is seen as weakness. Every time I choose negotiation over violence, I risk someone interpreting it as softness and coming after me. But you do it anyway. Choose mercy, I mean. I've noticed. Because of you. He pulled me closer, until I was practically in his lap. You make me want to be better than what I was raised to be, but that's dangerous for both of us. Before I could respond, his phone buzzed with an urgency that made both of us tense. Dante glanced at the screen and swore softly in Italian. What is it? The Marchettis are making their move. There's been an incident at one of our warehouses. He was already standing, reaching for his jacket. I need to go handle this. Fear spiked through me. Handle it how? Hopefully with conversation. He cupped my face, kissing me quickly. Stay here. Vincent will be outside if you need anything. I'll be back as soon as I can. Dante, wait. But he was already gone, the door closing behind him with a finality that made my stomach clench. I stood in the suddenly too quiet apartment, listening to the rain, and wondering what handling it actually meant in his world. 2 hours passed, then 3. I tried to distract myself with a book from his shelves, with television, with researching the painting I'd been working on. Nothing held my attention. All I could think about was Dante walking into danger, about the violence he claimed to avoid, but that seemed inevitable in his line of work. My phone rang at 11. Isabella's name flashed on the screen. We'd exchanged numbers after an awkward but ultimately friendly dinner, where she'd apologized for her initial hostility and welcomed me into the family with only minor threats about what would happen if I hurt her brother. Isabella, what's wrong? Dante's fine, she said immediately, understanding what my first fear would be. But there's a situation. Can you come to the following address? She rattled off a location in the warehouse district. Come alone. Don't tell anyone where you're going. That sounds like the beginning of every horror movie. Why would I? Because Dante needs you, and we're running out of time. Her voice was urgent, stripped of its usual sarcasm. Please, Ivy. Trust me. Against every instinct of self-preservation, I found myself grabbing my coat and heading for the door. Vincent was indeed waiting in the lobby and insisted on driving me despite Isabella's instruction to come alone. Some battles weren't worth fighting. The address led to a warehouse that looked abandoned from the outside. Its windows dark, no signs of activity. But when Vincent opened the door and I stepped inside, I found myself in what was clearly some kind of command center. Men in dark clothes moved purposefully around tables covered in laptops and communication equipment. And in the center of it all stood Dante, deep in conversation with Isabella, and 2 other men I didn't recognize. What is this? I asked, looking around in bewilderment. Dante's head snapped up at my voice, his expression cycling through surprise, relief, and something that looked like fear in quick succession. Ivy, you shouldn't be here. Your sister called me and said you needed me. I crossed the space between us. What's going on? Before he could answer, one of the men with him spoke. This is her? The art restorer? He looked me up and down skeptically. She doesn't look like much. Shut up, Rico, Isabella snapped. Ivy, we need your help. There's a painting. Bella, no. Dante's voice was sharp. We agreed to keep her out of this. Plans change. The Marchettis moved up their timeline. If we don't verify the painting's authenticity in the next 2 hours, the entire deal falls through and we lose any leverage we have. I looked between them, trying to piece together what was happening. What painting? What deal? Dante ran a hand through his hair, a gesture of frustration I'd come to recognize. The Marchettis have been trying to move into our territory for months. We arranged a peace treaty. They get distribution rights for certain goods. We get an artifact they acquired. A painting they claim is a lost Caravaggio. My art historian brain immediately kicked into gear despite the situation. A lost Caravaggio? Which one? The Taking of Christ, supposedly an earlier version than the one in Dublin. Isabella pulled up an image on a tablet. But we need to verify it's authentic before we finalize the exchange. Our usual appraiser is in the hospital, appendicitis of all the ridiculous timing. I studied the image, my trained eye immediately catching details. The dramatic use of light and shadow, the emotional intensity of the figures, the technical mastery of the brushwork. It could be a Caravaggio, but I'd need to examine it in person to be sure. "Where is it?" "That's the problem," Dante said quietly. "It's at the Marchetti compound. We'd be walking into enemy territory to examine it." "We?" I looked at him. "You mean you'd be walking in? I'm just an art restorer, remember? Completely civilian, not a threat." "You're with me. That makes you a target. Which is exactly why I'm the perfect person to send." I was already working through the logistics in my head. They wouldn't see me as a threat. I could examine the painting, verify its authenticity, and you'd have your answer without risking your people. Absolutely not. Dante's voice was flat, final. "I won't put you in danger." "I'm already in danger by being with you," I pointed out. "At least this way the danger serves a purpose. And honestly, the chance to examine a potentially lost Caravaggio?" I felt a thrill of academic excitement despite the circumstances. "That's the opportunity of a lifetime." Isabella was nodding. "She's right. The Marchettis know her face from the events she's attended with you, but she's never been involved in business. They'd see her as exactly what she is, your girlfriend helping with an art purchase." I said no. The absolute authority in Dante's voice should have made me back down. Instead, it made me stubborn. "You don't get to make decisions for me. Not about this. If I can help, if I can keep people from getting hurt, then I'm going." We stared at each other, a battle of wills playing out in silence. Finally, Dante looked away first, defeat written in every line of his body. "If, and I mean if, you do this, you follow every instruction exactly. Vincent and 2 other guards go with you. You examine the painting, give your assessment, and leave immediately. No conversation, no lingering, no putting yourself at additional risk." "Agreed. And Ivy?" He pulled me aside, away from the others. "If anything goes wrong, if you feel even slightly unsafe, you run. Forget the painting, forget the deal, just get out. Promise me." The raw fear in his eyes made my chest tight. I'd seen Dante face down business rivals without flinching, but the thought of me in danger clearly terrified him. "I promise," I said softly, standing on my toes to kiss him. "I'll be careful." 30 minutes later, I was in a car with Vincent and 2 stone-faced guards named Marco and Paolo, heading toward the Marchetti compound on the outskirts of the city. Dante had wanted to come, but Isabella had physically blocked him, arguing that his presence would only escalate tensions. "We'll have eyes on you the whole time," Vincent assured me as we drove through increasingly upscale neighborhoods. "Cameras, audio feed, the works. If anything seems wrong, we pull you out immediately." The Marchetti compound turned out to be a sprawling estate that made even Dante's real apartment look modest. We were met at the gate by armed security, who checked our credentials with military precision before allowing us through. Antonio Marchetti himself greeted us at the door. He was younger than I'd expected, maybe late 40s, with the kind of practiced charm that didn't quite reach his eyes. "Miss Chen, what a pleasure. Dante's beautiful girlfriend, gracing us with her expertise." He kissed my hand, his lips lingering just a fraction too long to be polite. "Please, come in. The painting is in my study." I followed him through a house that screamed new money, trying to buy old class. Everything was expensive, but nothing quite matched, like someone had bought entire showrooms without considering how they'd work together. The study, at least, had better taste. Floor-to-ceiling bookshelves, a massive desk, and there, on an easel in the corner, the painting. I moved toward it slowly, my art restorer instincts taking over. Even from across the room, I could see the dramatic interplay of light and shadow, the emotional intensity of the scene. Christ in the Garden of Gethsemane, surrounded by soldiers come to arrest him. It was similar to the Dublin version but with subtle differences. The position of certain figures, the background details. "May I?" I gestured at the painting. "By all means. That's why you're here." I pulled out my loupe, examining the surface closely. The craquelure, the fine network of cracks in the paint, looked genuine for the period. The brushwork was masterful, confident strokes that spoke of a trained hand. I checked the back of the canvas, looking for signs of modern materials or suspicious aging techniques. "It's extraordinary work," I said truthfully. "The technical mastery is undeniable." "But is it a Caravaggio?" Antonio asked, moving closer than I liked. "The style is certainly consistent with his work. The dramatic use of chiaroscuro, the emotional intensity, the technical execution, all match what we know of Caravaggio's methods." I continued my examination, checking details against the mental catalog of Caravaggio's authenticated works. But there are some inconsistencies that trouble me. Antonio's expression darkened. "Such as?" "The pigments. Caravaggio worked in the late 16th, early 17th century. The blues in this painting, they're ultramarine, which is correct for the period. But the binding medium." I scraped a tiny sample from the edge, examining it under magnification. "It's not quite right. There's a synthetic component that shouldn't be there if this was painted in Caravaggio's lifetime." "You're saying it's a forgery?" Antonio's voice was dangerously quiet. "I'm saying it's not by Caravaggio's hand. It could be a contemporary copy, painted by one of his students or followers. Or it could be a very good modern forgery. I'd need to do more extensive testing to be certain, but based on this preliminary examination, I cannot authenticate this as a genuine Caravaggio." The room went very still. I could feel Vincent tensing behind me, could see Marco and Paolo shifting their positions slightly, preparing for trouble. "I paid $8 million for this painting," Antonio said, his charm evaporating completely, "based on assurances from experts that it was authentic." "Then your experts were either mistaken or lying to you," I replied, keeping my voice calm and professional. "I'm sorry, Mr. Marchetti, but I can't tell you what you want to hear if it's not true." For a long moment, I thought he might do something rash. Then he laughed, a sharp sound without humor. "Well, that does complicate things." He pulled out his phone, typing rapidly. "I suppose I should thank you for your honesty, Miss Chen, though it does mean our deal with your boyfriend is off. Without a genuine Caravaggio to offer, I have nothing Dante wants." "Then you'll need to negotiate different terms," I said, already moving toward the door. My part here was done, and every instinct screamed at me to leave before the situation deteriorated further. "Before you go," Antonio said, his voice stopping me at the threshold, "tell Dante that if he's going to send his girlfriend to do his business, he should make sure she's prepared for all possible outcomes." The threat was clear, even if obliquely delivered. Vincent's hand went to his jacket, where I assumed he carried a weapon, but I shook my head slightly. We weren't here to start a war. "I'll pass along your message," I said evenly. "Thank you for allowing me to examine the painting." We made it back to the car without incident, but I didn't breathe properly until we were through the gates and back on public roads. My hands were shaking with delayed reaction, and I clasped them together to hide it. "You did good," Vincent said, glancing at me in the rearview mirror. "That took guts, telling Marchetti his painting was fake. I just told him the truth. What he does with it is his choice." My phone rang almost immediately. "Dante. Are you safe? Are you hurt? I'm going to kill Isabella for putting you in that position." "I'm fine," I interrupted his spiral. We're on our way back. The painting's a forgery, by the way. Or at least not a genuine Caravaggio. Marchetti wasn't happy, but we got out without incident. Thank God. Relief flooded his voice. When I saw Marchetti's expression on the camera feed, I thought, he broke off. Just get back here, please. When we arrived back at the warehouse, Dante pulled me into his arms before I'd fully exited the car, holding me so tightly I could barely breathe. Don't ever do that again, he murmured into my hair. Watching you in that room, knowing I couldn't protect you if something went wrong. But nothing did go wrong. I examined the painting, gave my professional opinion, and left. I pulled back to look at him. This is what you do, isn't it? Navigate dangerous situations, make deals, manage risks. You just did it through me this time. I don't want to do it through you. Ever again. His hands framed my face. You're not a tool, not a weapon. You're the one good, pure thing in my life. And I almost let you get hurt to salvage a business deal. The deal that would have prevented a war between your families. There are always deals, always conflicts, always next moves in this endless game. His voice was raw with emotion. But there's only one you. And if I have to choose between my business and your safety, it's not even a choice. Isabella approached, her expression apologetic. I'm sorry. I shouldn't have called her. I was thinking tactically, not about the fact that she's family, Dante finished, that she matters more than any strategic advantage she might provide. The word family hung in the air between us. We'd been together barely a month, but somehow it felt both too soon and completely natural to hear him claim me that way. What happens now? I asked. With Marchetti? With the deal? Now I deal with it the old-fashioned way. Negotiation, leverage, making him understand that attempting to encroach on our territory will cost him more than it's worth. Dante's expression hardened. But that's my problem. Yours is getting some rest after the night you've had. He drove me home himself, breaking protocol by dismissing Vincent. In my apartment, he helped me out of my coat, made me tea, and sat with me on my second-hand couch in comfortable silence. I meant what I said. He finally spoke. About you being the one good thing. Sometimes I wonder how long it'll take before my world corrupts you, before you realize what a mistake this all is. You don't get to decide when I've had enough, I replied, echoing my words from earlier. Maybe your world is dark and dangerous. Maybe being with you means risk and fear and complications. But it also means this. I gestured between us. It means someone who looks at me like I'm precious, who calls his mother every Tuesday, who hums opera when he thinks no one's listening. You're more than your business, Dante. Am I? Sometimes I'm not sure where the business ends and I begin. Then let me remind you. I kissed him, pouring into it all the fear I'd felt tonight, all the relief of being safe, all the growing certainty that whatever this was between us, it was worth fighting for. When we finally broke apart, Dante rested his forehead against mine. 6 months was our deal. We're barely at 1. And already I can't imagine letting you go. Then don't, I whispered. When the time comes, don't let go. That simple? That complicated? He laughed softly, pulling me closer. Outside, the city hummed with life and danger and possibility. But here, in my cramped apartment with my impossible boyfriend, everything felt exactly right, even if I knew it couldn't last forever. The weeks following the Marchetti incident settled into a new rhythm. Dante negotiated a tentative peace treaty that involved territory concessions and profit sharing rather than art exchanges. I returned to my restoration work at the gallery, though now with a private security detail that Marco found either amusing or concerning depending on his mood. Your boyfriend is very thorough, he observed one afternoon as I carefully cleaned an 18th century portrait. Vincent sat discreetly in the corner, reading a newspaper but clearly alert to everything around us. "He worries," I replied, not looking up from the delicate work. "He should. You've been seen at his side for over a month now. People talk. People make assumptions." "What kind of assumptions?" Marco set down the inventory clipboard he'd been working on. "That you're his weakness. That hurting you would hurt him. In his world, that makes you valuable as leverage." The stark assessment should have frightened me more than it did. Instead, I felt a strange calm. Let them try. I'm protected. No one is completely protected, Ivy. Not in that world. He wasn't wrong, but I'd made my choice. Whatever dangers came with loving Dante, and I had to admit to myself now that it was love, even if I hadn't said it aloud. I'd accepted them. My phone buzzed with a text from Dante. "Can you come to the apartment tonight? There's someone I want you to meet." "Who?" I texted back. "My mother. She's in town for a few days." I nearly dropped my brush. His mother. The woman who called from Sicily every Tuesday, who Dante spoke to in rapid Italian while she cooked. Meeting someone's mother felt real in a way that even the danger and the business complications hadn't. "Should I be nervous?" I typed. "Terrified," he replied, and I could practically hear his amusement. "She's going to interrogate you, but she'll love you." How could she not? That evening, I stood in front of my closet for 20 minutes, trying to decide what to wear to meet a Sicilian matriarch. Too formal seemed try-hard, too casual seemed disrespectful. I finally settled on a simple navy dress that was elegant without being ostentatious. Dante answered his apartment door looking nervous himself, which was oddly comforting. I'd seen him face down business rivals without flinching, but his mother clearly had the power to rattle him. "You look beautiful," he said, kissing me quickly. "Fair warning. My mother has decided you're either going to be her daughter-in-law, or she's adopting you herself. There's no middle ground." "No pressure, then." The woman who rose from Dante's couch was tiny, barely 5 feet tall, with silver-streaked dark hair pulled back in an elegant bun, and eyes the same storm cloud gray as her son's. Rosa Romano studied me with an intensity that made me feel like a painting under examination. Then she smiled, transforming her face, and pulled me into a tight embrace. "Finalmente," she exclaimed, switching to English with a thick accent. "Finally, my son brings home a nice girl. Come, sit, tell me everything about yourself. Dante says you restore paintings. This is good work, important work. Art is the soul of culture, yes?" The interrogation I'd been warned about turned out to be more like an enthusiastic interview. Rosa wanted to know everything: my education, my family background, how Dante and I had met, what I thought of Italian food, whether I'd ever been to Sicily, my opinions on everything from contemporary art to the correct way to make pasta carbonara. Dante watched from his position leaning against the kitchen counter, a soft smile playing at his lips as his mother grilled me with the thoroughness of an FBI agent. "And you are not afraid of my son?" Rosa asked suddenly, her eyes sharp. "Of what he does, who he is." I glanced at Dante, then back to his mother. "I won't pretend I'm not sometimes scared. Your son's world is dangerous. But I'm not afraid of him. There's a difference." Rosa nodded approvingly. "Good. Fear is healthy. It keeps you cautious. But fear of the man himself? That would be wrong. Dante is like his father in many ways, but in the important ways, he is different. Better." "Mama," Dante said quietly, a warning in his voice. "What?" "I speak only truth. Your father, God rest his soul, he was a hard man. Necessary for his time, perhaps. But you, mio figlio, you have kindness in you that your father never had. You just hide it very well." She turned back to me. "You bring this out in him. I see it on his face when he talks about you on our calls. He smiles more, laughs more, This is good. Love should make us more ourselves, not less. The word love hung in the air. Dante and I hadn't said it yet, had danced around it in our conversations, but never quite voiced it aloud. Hearing his mother say it so matter-of-factly made it feel both terrifying and inevitable. I should check on dinner, Rosa announced, standing and heading toward the kitchen. Dante, come help your mother. Ivy, you rest. You work too hard, both of you. Once we were alone, stirring sauce while Rosa seasoned meat, Dante spoke quietly. I'm sorry if she's overwhelming. She's just excited. She's been worried about me for years, thinking I'd never find someone who could understand this life. She's wonderful, I said honestly. I can see where you get your intensity from. He laughed. She's been like this my entire life. Fierce, protective, absolutely certain of her opinions. My father used to say she was the only person he was genuinely afraid of. Was he really as hard as she says? Dante's hand stilled on the wooden spoon. Harder. He ran the family with absolute authority. Dissent wasn't tolerated. Mercy was weakness. Loyalty was everything. When he died 5 years ago, I inherited an empire built on fear and violence. And you've been trying to change it. Slowly. Carefully. Too fast and the old guard revolts, thinking I'm weak. Too slow and nothing improves. It's a constant balancing act. I moved closer, wrapping my arms around him from behind. You're doing important work. Building something better than what you inherited. With you, it feels possible. Before, it felt like swimming against an impossible current. But you make me want to be the man you see when you look at me, not the man my father trained me to be. Rosa appeared in the doorway, a knowing smile on her face. Dante, stop monopolizing her. Dinner is almost ready. Ivy, come sit. I want to hear about this gallery where you work. Dinner was a revelation. Rosa had cooked enough food for 10 people. Pasta, chicken cacciatore, roasted vegetables, fresh bread. Everything was delicious, flavored with the kind of skill that came from decades of practice. In Sicily, food is how we show love, Rosa explained, as she piled more pasta on my plate despite my protests. You are too thin, both of you. Dante, you are not eating properly. This is what happens when you live alone, no one to cook for you. I manage fine, Mama. Fine is not good enough. You should eat well, sleep well, take time for life outside of business. This is what I tell him every week, Ivy. Maybe you will have better luck getting him to listen. After dinner, Rosa insisted on showing me photo albums, baby pictures of Dante that made him groan in embarrassment, family gatherings, holidays. In every photo, Rosa beamed with maternal pride, while Marco Romano remained stiff and formal, even in family settings. You see? Rosa pointed to one photo from Dante's teenage years. Already he looks like his father, same serious face. But here, she flipped to a recent photo from the previous Christmas, Dante and Isabella together, both laughing at something off camera. Here he looks like himself. Happy. Around 10, Rosa declared she was tired from her journey and needed rest. She kissed me on both cheeks, holding my face in her hands. You are good for my son. I see this clearly. Take care of each other. Yes. This world he lives in, it tries to take away softness, humanity. Don't let it. After she retired to Dante's guest room, we sat together on the couch, my head on his shoulder, his arm around me. She likes you, Dante said, in case that wasn't obvious. I like her too. She's exactly what a mother should be, fierce and loving in equal measure. She sees things clearly, always has. When she said you bring out the better parts of me. He trailed off, turning to look at me. She's right. You do. You were already those things. I just help you remember. No, you're more than a reminder. You're... He stopped, seeming to struggle with words. You make me want things I thought I'd given up on. A life beyond the business, beyond the constant negotiations and territory disputes and power plays. A real life. What kind of life? I asked softly. Mornings without security briefings. Evenings without hidden weapons. Relationships based on affection rather than strategic advantage. Maybe even... He hesitated. A family someday. Children who could grow up differently than I did. The vulnerability in his admission made my throat tight. That sounds beautiful. It's probably impossible. I'm in too deep, have too many enemies, too much history. Or maybe, I said, shifting to face him fully, you're exactly deep enough to understand why it matters. Why building something better is worth the risk. Dante's hand came up to cup my face, his thumb tracing my cheekbone. I love you. I know it's fast. I know we're still figuring this out. But I need you to know. You've become the most important thing in my life. My heart stuttered, then soared. I love you too. Probably have for weeks. I was just too scared to admit it. Scared of what? That it was too good to be real. That someone like you couldn't actually love someone like me. That eventually you'd realize I don't fit in your world and... He silenced me with a kiss, deep and thorough and full of promise. When we broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. You don't need to fit my world. You've created our own world, separate from all the darkness and danger. A place where I get to be just Dante, not Dante Romano, head of the family. That's the greatest gift anyone's ever given me. We stayed like that for a long time, wrapped around each other, finding comfort in shared breath and heartbeat. Outside, the city continued its complicated dance of light and shadow. But here, in Dante's apartment with his mother sleeping in the next room and love finally spoken aloud between us, everything felt hopeful in a way I hadn't experienced in years. The next morning brought reality crashing back. I woke in Dante's bed. We'd fallen asleep fully clothed, too exhausted for anything but holding each other, to the sound of urgent voices in the living room. Dante was already up, pulling on yesterday's shirt, his expression grim. What's wrong? I asked, sitting up. Marchetti's made a move. He's claiming territory that's been neutral ground for decades, trying to force my hand. He grabbed his phone, already typing. I need to handle this. Stay here with my mother. Vincent will remain with you both. Dante. I know. We just had this perfect evening, and now I'm running off to deal with business. This is what my life is, Ivy. Crisis after crisis, fire after fire. He sat on the edge of the bed, taking my hand. If you want out, if this is too much, stop. I squeezed his fingers. Stop offering me exits. I'm not going anywhere. Handle your crisis. I'll be here when you get back. Relief washed over his face. He kissed me quickly, fiercely, then was gone. Rosa emerged from the guest room as I was making coffee, her hair still in a loose braid, wearing a robe she must have brought. He left for business? I nodded. Some kind of territory dispute. She sighed, moving to take over the coffee preparation with the easy competence of someone who knew her way around a kitchen. This is the life. I lived it with his father for 40 years. Crisis, danger, always looking over the shoulder. It does not get easier. But you stayed. Despite everything. Because I loved him. And because someone needs to remember that these men, these dangerous men, they are also human. They need softness somewhere, or the darkness eats them alive. She poured us both coffee, adding sugar to hers. You are strong enough for this, I think. You see my son clearly, both the danger and the man beneath. That is rare. We spent the day together, Rosa teaching me to make fresh pasta while telling stories about Dante's childhood. The boy who had cried over injured birds, The teenager who had defended his sister against bullies despite being smaller than them. The young man who had tried to refuse his inheritance, only to be told by his father that refusing was not an option. "He carries guilt," Rosa said as we rolled out dough. "For things he has done in this business, for things his father taught him to do. He tries to be better, but the past, it stays with us." "He's building something better," I replied, slowly but genuinely. "Yes, and you help with this. You remind him why it matters to be better." She covered my hand with hers, her grip surprisingly strong. "Protect his heart, Ivy. He gives it to very few people. That he gives it to you, this is special." Dante returned late that evening, looking exhausted but unharmed. His mother took one look at him and began reheating dinner without a word, understanding that he needed to eat before he could talk. "It's handled," he said finally, after finishing a plate of pasta. "For now." Marchetti agreed to back down in exchange for a percentage of the art district profits. "It's more than I wanted to give, but it avoids open conflict." "You chose negotiation over violence," I observed. "That's worth the extra percentage. My father would have responded with force, made an example that no one could miss." "But you're not your father," Rosa said firmly. "You are your own man, making your own choices. This is good." He looked at his mother, then at me, something settling in his expression. "You're both right. I'm building something different. It's slow and it's costly, but it's worth it." Rosa left the next day, extracting promises that we'd visit Sicily soon and that I'd call her regularly. "You are family now," she told me at the airport. "This means I worry about you like I worry about Dante and Isabella. Take care of each other, yes?" Back at Dante's apartment, the space felt different without Rosa's vibrant presence. More intimate somehow, just the two of us navigating what came next. "I've been thinking," Dante said that evening, "about what I want, for us, for the future. And I don't want you living across the city anymore. I want you here, where I know you're safe, where I can wake up with you every morning." He held up a hand before I could protest. "Keep your apartment if you want it. Keep your independence. But make this your home too. With me." It was too fast, too soon, too intense. And yet, when I thought about it, it felt right. "Okay," I said. "Yes." His smile was like sunrise. "Yes?" "Yes, on one condition. Anything. You let me redecorate. This place is beautiful, but it's very bachelor pad. If I'm living here, it needs some warmth." Dante laughed, pulling me into his arms. "Done. You can paint every wall purple if you want. As long as you're here, nothing else matters." As we stood there in his apartment that would become our apartment, I marveled at how quickly life could change. 3 months ago, I'd been running from a stalker, barely making rent, alone and afraid. Now I was moving in with a man I loved, who loved me back, building a life that was complicated and dangerous, but also full of hope. It wouldn't be easy. There would be more crises, more dangers, more moments of fear. But there would also be this, his arms around me, his heartbeat under my ear, the certainty that whatever came, we'd face it together. And for now, that was enough. Moving in with Dante transformed my understanding of what domestic life could be. Our mornings developed a rhythm. Him brewing espresso while I made breakfast, stealing kisses between stirring eggs and toasting bread. He'd read me headlines from the newspaper in Italian, translating the interesting bits, while I'd tell him about whatever painting I was working on at the gallery. For 3 blissful weeks, it felt almost normal. Almost like we were just a regular couple navigating cohabitation, arguing about whether to get plants, I won, and where to put my overflowing bookshelves. He suggested everywhere, buying additional shelving when I ran out of space. But normal was never meant to last in Dante's world. I was at the gallery on a Tuesday afternoon, carefully removing old varnish from a Renaissance Madonna, when my phone rang. Dante's name flashed on the screen, and I almost let it go to voicemail. He knew I didn't like being interrupted during delicate work. But something made me answer. Ivy. His voice was strained in a way I'd never heard before. I need you to listen carefully and do exactly as I say. Don't ask questions, just listen. Fear spiked through me. What's wrong? Vincent is 5 minutes away. When he arrives, go with him immediately. Don't pack anything. Don't stop to talk to anyone. Just leave. Dante, you're scaring me. There's been an incident. The Marchettis are claiming I violated our treaty, and they're threatening retaliation. Isabella's already secured. Mother is safe in Sicily. But I need to know you're protected. My hands had started shaking. I set down the delicate brush before I damaged something irreplaceable. What kind of retaliation? The kind that targets the people I love. His voice cracked slightly on the last word. Please, cara mia. Just do this for me. I can't focus on handling this if I'm terrified about your safety. Vincent appeared in the doorway at that exact moment, his face grim. I nodded at him, already gathering my purse. I'm leaving now, I told Dante. Where are you? Handling it. I'll call when it's safe. I love you. The line went dead before I could respond. Vincent drove in silence, taking turns so quickly I had to brace myself against the door. We weren't heading to Dante's apartment or my old place. Instead, we pulled up to a nondescript building in a part of the city I'd never visited. Safe house, Vincent explained, helping me out. Used it myself a few times. Everything you need is inside. Don't leave. Don't open the door for anyone but me or Mr. Romano. Understood? I nodded mutely, following him into a third-floor apartment that was functional but impersonal. Generic furniture, stocked kitchen, blackout curtains on the windows. I'll be outside, Vincent said. You need anything, call this number. He handed me a card with digits written in pen. It goes directly to me. Can't be traced. Then I was alone. The first hour passed in numb shock. I paced the small apartment, checked my phone obsessively for messages that didn't come, and tried to process what was happening. The second hour brought spiraling anxiety. What if Dante was hurt? What if this incident was worse than he'd let on? What if... My phone finally rang at the 3-hour mark. Not Dante, but Isabella. Are you safe? She demanded without preamble. Yes. Vincent brought me to a safe house. What's going on? Where's Dante? Negotiating with the Marchettis. There was an attempted hit on one of our distribution centers. 3 men dead. Millions in product destroyed. The Marchettis are denying involvement, but all evidence points to them. My stomach dropped. People died? People in this business die all the time, Ivy. That's the reality. Her voice was hard, pragmatic. The question is whether we respond with proportional force or let it slide and look weak. And Dante is trying to find a third option. Proof that someone else orchestrated the attack and is trying to frame the Marchettis to start a war between our families. Is that possible? In our world? Anything's possible. Stay where you are. Don't contact anyone. I'll update you when I can. She hung up before I could ask more questions. The hours crawled by. I tried to sleep, but couldn't. Tried to eat, but had no appetite. I found myself thinking about Rose's words. This is the life. Crisis, danger, always looking over the shoulder. It does not get easier. Was this what I'd signed up for? Hiding in safe houses while Dante risked his life to prevent war? Loving a man whose enemies might target me just to hurt him? My phone rang again at midnight. Finally, Dante. Are you okay? I asked immediately. Exhausted. Frustrated. But yes, okay. He sounded utterly drained. I found evidence that the attack was orchestrated by a third party, a smaller family trying to trigger a war between us and the Marchettis so they could expand during the chaos. Showed the proof to Marchetti, and he's agreed to a joint investigation. So it's over? For now. These things are never truly over. Just managed. A pause. I'm coming to you. I need to see you. Make sure you're really safe. He arrived 20 minutes later, looking worse than I'd ever seen him. Dark circles under his eyes, his shirt rumpled, a bruise darkening his jaw that hadn't been there that morning. He pulled me into his arms the moment the door closed, holding so tightly I could barely breathe. "I'm sorry," he murmured into my hair. "I'm so sorry you had to go through this. This is exactly what I wanted to protect you from." "You did protect me. I'm safe. You're safe. This time. But there will be a next time, and a time after that. This is my life, Ivy. Crisis after crisis. Violence lurking around every corner. I thought I could separate you from it, keep you sheltered in our little domestic bubble. But today proved that's impossible." I pulled back to look at him. Really look at him. He wasn't just exhausted. He was defeated in a way I'd never seen. Like he'd been fighting a battle he knew he couldn't win. "What are you saying?" "That maybe I was selfish, dragging you into this. You deserve better than hiding in safe houses and wondering if your boyfriend is going to come home. You deserve someone whose world doesn't include death threats and territory disputes." "Dante, I've been thinking about what happens when our 6 months are up. Our original deal. Maybe that was right. Maybe we should stick to the plan. You walk away. Go back to your quiet life. Find someone normal who can give you the stability you deserve." Anger flared through me, hot and immediate. "Don't you dare make this decision for me. Don't you dare decide what I deserve or what I can handle. I'm trying to protect you. By pushing me away? By deciding that loving you is too hard so you won't even let me try?" I stepped closer to him, poking his chest for emphasis. "You told me I was the one good thing in your life. You said I made you want to be better. Was that all a lie?" "Of course not. But then stop trying to protect me from the consequences of loving you and let me make my own choices." My voice had risen to a shout. "Yes, today was scary. Yes, your world is dangerous. But I knew that going in, Dante. I knew what I was choosing. You couldn't have known how it would feel. The fear, the uncertainty. You're right, I couldn't. But I also couldn't have known how it would feel to wake up next to you every morning, to watch you make espresso while humming opera, to see you with your mother, with Isabella, with me, to be loved by you." Tears were streaming down my face now. "So don't take that away from me because you're scared I can't handle the hard parts. I'm stronger than you think." Dante stared at me, something breaking in his expression. "You're not supposed to be the one comforting me right now. I'm supposed to be strong for you. We're supposed to be strong for each other. That's how this works." I took his hands in mine. "I love you. All of you, including the complicated, dangerous parts. And if you love me, really love me, then you'll stop trying to make this decision alone. I do love you. So much it terrifies me. Good. Being terrified means it matters." I pulled him close again, feeling the tension slowly drain from his body. "We'll figure this out together. The dangers, the complications, all of it. Together." He kissed me then, desperate and relieved and full of promises. When we finally broke apart, he rested his forehead against mine. "I don't deserve you." "Probably not," I agreed, making him laugh shakily. "But you're stuck with me anyway." We stayed in the safe house that night, neither of us willing to be separated again so soon. In the morning, Vincent drove us back to the apartment, and life resumed its careful balance of normalcy and chaos. The weeks that followed brought changes. Dante began actively restructuring his operations, delegating more to trusted lieutenants, pulling back from the day-to-day dangers of the business. It was slow work, and it met resistance from the old guard who saw any change as weakness. But he persisted, building something new brick by careful brick. I started teaching a night class at the community college, art history for non-majors. It gave me a creative outlet separate from restoration work and from Dante's world. My students, most of them working adults returning to education, had no idea who I was dating. To them, I was just Professor Chen, who brought too much enthusiasm to discussions of Renaissance perspective. 6 months came and went. The anniversary of our arrangement passed without either of us mentioning it. We were long past contracts and deals. This was real, messy, complicated, and entirely ours. Then came the morning I woke up nauseous, the same feeling that had plagued me for 3 days in a row. I stared at the pregnancy test in the bathroom, watching the 2 lines appear with a mixture of terror and wonder. Pregnant. I was pregnant with Dante Romano's child. I thought about keeping it secret for a while, waiting for the right moment. But when Dante found me sitting on the bathroom floor that evening, still staring at the test, the words spilled out. I'm pregnant. His face cycled through shock, fear, and then pure joy so intense it took my breath away. He dropped to his knees beside me, his hand trembling as it covered my still flat stomach. A baby? Our baby? I nodded, tears spilling over. I know we never discussed this. I know it complicates everything even more. It's perfect. You're perfect. He was crying too now, something I'd never seen. I never thought I'd have this. A real family, built on love instead of obligation. Thank you. I haven't done anything yet except throw up a lot, I said, laughing through tears. You've given me hope. A future that's more than business and power plays. A reason to make this world safer. He called his mother that night, switching to rapid Italian the moment she answered. I could hear Rosa's delighted shriek even from across the room, could hear her blessing us in a mixture of Italian and English. You are giving me a grandchild, she exclaimed when Dante put the phone on speaker. This is the greatest gift. When can you visit? I will cook. I will prepare everything. Soon, Mama, Dante promised. We'll come soon. Isabella's reaction was more measured, but no less genuine. A baby, in this family, this will change everything. I know, Dante replied. It already has. And it was true. The knowledge that we were bringing a child into this world crystallized Dante's resolve to change his business. He started unwinding the most dangerous operations, investing instead in legitimate enterprises, art galleries, restaurants, real estate development, businesses that could be passed down without blood and violence. It wasn't easy. There were threats from rivals who saw the changes as weakness. There were challenges from within his own organization, from men who preferred the old ways. But Dante held firm, and slowly, incredibly, it worked. By the time our daughter was born, Lucia Rosa Romano, named for the light she brought into our lives, and for the grandmother who wept with joy at her arrival, Dante had successfully transitioned most of his operations to legitimate business. There were still shadows, still complications from the past that couldn't be completely erased. But the worst of it, the violence and constant danger, had been left behind. We married quietly when Lucia was 6 months old, just family and a small ceremony at the gallery where I still worked part-time. Rosa cried. Isabella served as witness, and Vincent stood guard even though the need for such security had diminished. I, Dante Marco Romano, take you, Ivy Chen, to be my wife, Dante said, his voice steady despite the emotion in his eyes. You saw past the monster everyone expected me to be, and helped me become the man I wanted to be instead. You gave me a family built on love. You gave me hope. And I promised to spend the rest of my life being worthy of those gifts. My vows were simpler, but no less heartfelt. I choose you, not just today, but every day. Through the complications and the fears and the beautiful moments, I choose us. As we kiss to seal our vows, with Lucia babbling happily in Rosa's arms and our small family surrounding us, I thought about that night in the alley. How I'd been running from one danger and stumbled into another. How Dante had offered protection, and I'd somehow found everything I'd never known I wanted. Our story wasn't a fairy tale. It was messy and complicated, born from desperation and evolving into something neither of us had expected. But it was ours, built on honest foundation of choosing each other despite and because of all the complications. "What are you thinking?" Dante murmured against my hair as we swayed together during our first dance, watched by our small gathering of family and friends. That I would make the same choice again. Running into that alley, accepting your deal, falling in love with you. All of it. Even the scary parts? Especially the scary parts. They made this. I gestured at our daughter, our family, the life we'd built. Possible. He kissed me again, deeper this time. "I love you, Mrs. Romano. I love you too, even when you're being impossible. Especially when I'm being impossible," he corrected with a grin. Lucia chose that moment to demand attention, and we broke apart laughing as Rosa brought her over. Our daughter, with her father's storm cloud eyes and my dark hair, reached for Dante with complete trust. This was what we'd built from darkness and fear and desperate choices. A family, a life, a future that looked nothing like either of us had imagined but was somehow perfect anyway. The shadows of Dante's past would always be there, lurking at the edges. But they were just that. Shadows. The light we'd created together was far stronger. And as I watched my husband dance with our daughter, while his mother looked on with tears of joy, I knew with absolute certainty that every risk had been worth it. Every moment of fear, every complication, every impossible choice, all of it led us here. To a life built not on contracts or arrangements, but on love and trust and the courage to choose each other every single day. The end was really just the beginning.